Okay, we are going to look at a sugya on tefila tzibbur, davening with a minyan, and all that comes with it. And the first part, which is I'd say pretty lengthy, of this shiur, is going to be looking at the mitzvah of tefila tzibbur and what the mahut of it is. What's the nature of tefila tzibbur? Let's think about it for a second. It's a very strange thing, tefila tzibbur, and as prayer to God shouldn't really have anything to do with who's around you. So let's look at the different sources, and we'll go from there. Okay, so the first source we're going to look at is Rambam. This is a more philosophical Rambam, but it's going to lend to our question here. The Rambam says as follows: once we know that God is not physical, we know that God doesn't have any of the aspects of physicality. Lo chibur v'lo pirud. He can't be connected and he can't be divided. Lo makom v'lo midah. He can't take up space or any measurements. Lo aliyah v'lo yerida. He can't go up and he can't go down. Lo yamin v'lo small. He can't move left or right. Lo panim v'lo achor. He can't go forward or backwards. Lo yeshiva v'lo midah. He can't sit down and he can't stand up. Right? All these things are aspects of physicality. Lo yamin v'lo. Ve'eno matsui. There's no relationship to time. He doesn't have a beginning and an end, and he doesn't have an amount of years that he's existed. Right? He doesn't change. Because nothing can cause God to change. He's perfect. So what could cause God to change? He doesn't have life or death. In the same way that we find so often things that are living have life and death. Things that are physical have life and death. He doesn't have wisdom in the same way and intelligence the same way a person does. He doesn't have any idea of emotions because emotions are fickle, emotions change. So they're actually an aspect of physicality. So he doesn't get angry. He doesn't get happy. He's not depressed. He doesn't have speech or silence the way a person does. Okay, so that's the Chacham's idea. So knowing that God doesn't have any aspects of physicality, let's look at this next thing. Where we're looking at here is a chart of 5 different psukim and some of the commentaries on them. These psukim we're going to see in a Gemara that's going to use these psukim to understand tefila b'tzibur. The first one that we have here is Vani tefilasi l'cha Hashem eitz ratzon elkim berov chasdecha aneni be'emes yishecha. Okay, and the idea here is that it talks about an eitz ratzon. Okay, it talks about a time of desire, a time that God can be approached. The Idn Ezra explains Vani here in this pasuk. He explains, so David HaMelech is saying that I'm hoping to be able to pray to God and find one of these good times to talk to God. The Radak explains, Kolomar here in source number 4, Kolomar anit tefilasi l'cha tamid, ulai yeh ba'achas me'osos eitz ratzon. Maybe I'll have one of these times. Ratzon li shetkabel tefilasi. So I'll be able to find one of these good times. My prayers will be accepted, and I'll be able to go out of Golus. I'll be able to go out of exile. Okay. Yeshayahu here in source number 5. Rashi explains Beis Ratzon. What's an Eis Ratzon in this pasuk? In Yeshayahu, he says at a time of prayer that you are willing to listen and be appeased before me. The Radak explains on that same pasuk here in source number 7. At the time that you do my will, I will answer you. God says, okay, so that's the time, and then we have this source here, number 8. So let's see how the Gemara uses these sources and the idea of an Eis Ratzon. Okay, but just to ask a question here on this Idn Ezra and the Radak, it seems like an Eis Ratzon is a time when tefillos are answered, right? It's a time when tefillos are answered. You pray to God during Eis Ratzon, and that's when tefillos are answered. And from Rashi, it seems that Eis Ratzon is a time when the Jewish people are in God's favor. And this Rashi here on source number 6, right? So what exactly, though? Our question here is, what exactly is an Eis Ratzon? What is this time of appeasement that these psukim are all centered around? Okay, so that leads us to this Gemara. Amar le Rav Yitzchak le Rav Nachman. Rav Yitzchak says to Rav Nachman, "My taima lo asin mar lebei k'nishasei letzulye." So why didn't you come to shul to daven? Why didn't you come to the synagogue to daven? So Amar le lo yacholina. He says I wasn't able to come. So Amar le lekanfe lemar asal letzulye. So he says, so let us gather 10 people. And they'll come to you to daven. So Amar le, so he says, right? So he says to him, hold on a second, I'm just trying to. Amar le tricha le milsa. So he says it's difficult. I don't want to impose on all these people. So right. So he says he's going to tell the tzibbur to send a messenger when they're davening to come, and so you can come and daven at the exact same time. So you won't be with them and they won't be with you, but they'll be with you. So he says, right, so okay, good. So he says, Amar le my kulei. So he says, what do I need all this for? Right? It's a lot of fuss for all this stuff. So Amar le, Damar Rav Yochanan mishum beyachai, my dechsiv anis v'yasi lecha Hashem Eis Ratzon. Right. So what does this mean in the pasuk that we saw that sorry, I lost my place here. I need tefillah Hashem, and my prayers come to you, Hashem, in Eis Ratzon. So Emasai, the Gemara asks, Emasai Eis Ratzon. What does that mean that you should come daven at an Eis Ratzon? Right? What does that mean that it's an Eis Ratzon? So he says, at a time when the tzibbur davens, and when the tzibbur davens, that becomes an Eis Ratzon, or that they daven an Eis Ratzon, and that's what it means. So Rav Yossi bar Chanina amar mehacha. So Rav Yossi bar Chanina, right? So he has a different look at it. He says that we understand tefillah b'tzibur and all the fuss that's necessary for it from a different pasuk. Omar Hashem beis ratzon anisecha, right? So this is what Hashem says: at a time of acceptance, I answered you, right? So right, so that's where we know that that's what tefillah b'tzibur is from. Okay, Ravacha bar Chanina Amar mehacha hein el kavir v'lo yimas chsiv pedei b'shalom nafshi mikarav likol rabim hayu amadi. Okay, so this was Rav Acha, right? So he says it's from a different pasuk. He says Hashem is great. He doesn't hate anybody, right? But he takes a different way of reading the pasuk. So Hashem won't despise the prayers of the great people. Who's that? That's the tzibbur. Okay. Tanya Nami Hachi, we have a different price. It says Nachon Amar Minayin Shein HaKadosh Baruch Hu Moes V'Tfilas Nashal Rabbim. How do we know HaKadosh Baruch Hu doesn't reject the tefillah of the rabbim? Shneimar Hein El Kavir V'Lo Yimas. Right. So it says right. So what's the pasuk? He says God doesn't despise like the great people. Right, Kadosh Baruch Hu says whoever is osik in Torah learning and does chesed and davens the tzibur ma'ala, I love ki'ilu padani. So I look as if he's redeemed me, liu banai, me and my sons, maybe bein umas olam, from the nations of the world. Okay, so we have a right. So we have an idea of what tefillah b'tzibur here is an Eis Ratzon. So again, so our first question was trying to understand what an Eis Ratzon is, right? Especially since if God doesn't have any constraints of time, so the whole idea of an Eis Ratzon is a strange idea, right? That seems to be a problem. Now we can also ask, how is an Eis Ratzon when the tzibur is davening? How does that make it an Eis Ratzon? And is there a difference that we see here between accepting prayer and not despising prayer? Right, those seems to be two different things. Okay, the Gra here, the Vilna Gaon says as follows. Okay, so he says Mishum deloy tachein etzal Kadosh Baruch Hu Eis Ratzon damashma shatayim mishtarim. It doesn't make any sense, right, based on some of the things that we've just said, that HaKadosh Baruch Hu has specific times that are good for to daven to Hashem. Rather, as many things that we see with the HaKadosh Baruch Hu, that we sort of like the superficial reading of it is that it has to do with Hashem, but once we investigate it a little, we recognize that it really has to do with us. When we do a mitzvah, as Eis Ratzon, right? So when we do a mitzvah, that's what makes it an Eis Ratzon. Right? So that's the idea of a vadahi be'esa tefila shetzibbur mispalim. So that makes sense. It's a time when the tefila, when the tzibbur is davening together, but also mitzvah, but can't face it. They do a mitzvah all together. It's a great mitzvah. The gami pasuk kaval karano elav muchach shetzibbur mispalim tefila chashuva he mikach rumya dekrai. Right. So we see from the pasuk, it seems that when the tzibbur gets together, that's a good time to daven, and we see this from this Gemara in Yevamos. Okay, so look at the Gemara in Yevamos. Says like this. Says Menashe Haragas Yeshayahu Amar Rabba Migdan Dani Vekatle Amar Lei Masa Rabcha Amar Mi Kashem Elkeinu B'Chol Koreinu Olav V'at Amar Darshu Hashem Yimatzo. So it says who goes out to Hashem? Anyone that calls out to him, right? But it also says Darshu Hashem Yimatzo, go find Hashem where He is. So it seems the puzzle psukim contradict each other. Kasha Karaya Hadari. The two psukim seem to contradict each other. Darsho Shami Matzo. What does it mean that go search out God where He's to be found? Haba Yachid. That's when somebody's davening. Haba Tzibbur. And then when it says that God comes to you wherever they call Him out, that's a Tzibbur. When does an individual have this great thing? That's between Rosh Hashanah and Yom Kippur. Okay, so if it's true, according to the Gra, that an Eis Ratzon doesn't have anything to do with God, right? So, but with man, so what is it? And what brings it on? Right, okay. And what about praying with a tzibbur as opposed to praying a private individual prayer by yourself? What does that bring on an Eis Ratzon? Okay. Let's look at these next psukim that are going to be in this next Gemara we're going to see. This is a pasuk in Eicha Nasa Aveno Al Kapayim El Kava Shamayim. Right, let's lift up our hearts with our hands to God in heaven. The next pasuk we see V'Yavteu B'Fiyam B'Lshonam Yichaz V'Lo V'Libo Lo Nachon Imo V'Lo Ne'ameno B'Briso. Here in source number 13, that they deceived Hashem with their speech, they lied to Him with their words. Their hearts were in constant towards Him. They were untrue to their covenant. Right, that God is merciful. He forgives sin, and He held back His anger again. Right, and to not to be so angry. The next pasuk here in Tehillim in source number 15 is they remembered that God was their rock. Hashem Most High, He redeemed them. Okay, then so let's see how the Gemara uses these psukim. Amar Rabbi Ami. Okay, so he says, "Ain't filasol shel adam nishmas ela im kain masim nafsho bekapo." Right, that a tefillah is not heard unless a person puts his soul in his hand. Right, he has to put his entire soul to Hashem. Okay, right, he's got to do that. So shenamar nasal avenu al kapayim. Right, so we see that was our first pasuk that we had earlier. Okay, Eini, is that really true? V'hu akim Shmuel amur alai v'darash v'yavteu b'fiyam l'shanam v'chazu lo v'libam lo nachon imo v'lo naman b'briso. Right, so so the Gemara says, but really, is that true? Shmuel once had somebody that would talk to, he would teach, and this person was Matarian. He would translate it for everybody else. It would be sort of an interpreter to the public. Okay, and this guy says, but they so that they looked at it differently, right? The pasuk was they tricked him, right? They lied to Hashem, and their heart wasn't with Hashem, right? And they weren't faithful to the bris with Hashem, and yet the pasuk says that Hashem that Hashem was still merciful towards him. So even all prayers are accepted, even if the first pasuk says that they weren't really with Hashem, right? They weren't sincere in their prayers. Lo kasha kam b'yachid kam b'tzibur. So the Gemara says that's not difficult. When somebody prays and they're not sincere, Hashem will reject it if they're davening alone. But with the tzibur, even if they're not sincere. So Hashem will still recognize it and still accept the prayers. Okay, so our question has to be, what does sincerity have to do with the success of prayer? I mean, it seems kind of obvious, but obviously it's not obvious if tefillah could still be accepted without it, right? And why is it that sincerity is not a mitigating factor when it comes to prayer with the tzibbur? Okay, this next piece is based on this Gemara in Tanis. This is Rabbi Zucker, my Rebbe, and this is from his commentary on the Rambam. He says as follows: Perish Adavar. This is inside this box here. Shekol zman shebnei Yisrael mispalim nishmas tfilasam be'ezeh ofen mipnei shetfilasam afilu himukukeles have me'en v'yizkero kilokim tzuram v'kel yon golam. Okay, so Zucker says that all prayers of the tzibbur, it doesn't matter how corrupted they are, right? Like they weren't sincere, are part of this idea that Hashem is remembered by Bnei Israel, who puts hope into the Jewish people, right? And the hashgacha pratis that the Jewish people uniquely enjoy, okay? Because it says, right? It says, "Keshafonu Bnei Israel Hashem yesh tikva lehem." Whenever this pasuk tells Bnei Israel that whenever you turn to Hashem, you have hope. Because Bnei Israel can rely on the hashgacha pratis with Hashem. Okay, so it seems that the tzibbur is listened to because of their hopes that they put into the Jewish people, and that merits this divine providence that Bnei Israel has special. Okay, you look at the Rambam here. It says, tefillah tzibbur nishmas tami. The Rambam says that tefillah b'tzibbur is always listened to. Even if members of the minyan of the tzibbur are sinners, like we saw before, Hakadosh Baruch Hu doesn't reject, isn't disgusted by the tefillah of the Rabbim at any point. A person has to connect with the tzibbur. He shouldn't daven as an individual whenever he can daven with the tzibbur. A person should always get up early and go to the shul. Because tefillah is not listened to except in a shul. Anyone that has a shul in his town, anyone that has a shul, anyone that has a shul in his town and doesn't daven in it is called a bad neighbor. Okay, so that's the Rambam on the importance of davening in a shul and davening in a tzibbur. Okay, so the Rabbi Zucker explains here again. Kavanas nishmas kan hi aniso yisala letzakas latzoek l'mel sedu. So the idea that what does it mean that it's listened to, right? So no matter what, even if there are sinners, right? Tefillah of tzibbur is always listened to, and Hashem doesn't turn away from the prayers of the tzibbur. Okay, so. So and again, that leads to our question that we had before of why is it that that lack of sincerity is not a mitigating factor? Okay, and these are right. So then we have another question: is there an obligation to pray in a minyan? Okay, that's a question. Is there an obligation? More of a halachic question. So far, we've been trying to understand this idea of tefillah b'tzibur. Now, in a halachic question, is there an obligation to daven with the minyan? So, if yes, why doesn't the Rambam say that? Right? The Rambam doesn't say there's an obligation down with a minyan. He says a person, he needs to. Right? Why does he say that? Okay, and if there is no obligation, why isn't there an obligation to daven with tefillah b'tzibur if it's such a benefit? Okay, and are prayers in the tzibbur answered, or is it prayers in the shul are answered? And could it be that prayers in the shul are prayers in the tzibbur? Are they one and the same? Right? So, and if so, is there such a thing as prayers outside of shul with a minyan counting as tefillah b'tzibur? Right? And if not, then what is this idea of tefillah b'tzibur? Okay. A lot of questions. The Tur says, "Lo yispal adam ela bebeis haKnesses imat tzibur." Okay, a person shouldn't daven except in a shul with a tzibur. Dam Rabbi Yochanan ein tefillah shel adam nishmas ela bebeis haKnesses perishim tzibur. A person shouldn't daven. Right, that's what Rabbi Yochanan says. A person shouldn't daven. A person's tefillahs aren't answered unless they're in a beis knesses. And when he explains what does a beis knesses mean, imat tzibur. Okay, so he definitely the Torah, it seems from here, definitely maintains that praying in a shul is what's meant by praying with the tzibbur. They seem to be synonymous. Okay. The Beis Yosef, right, takes it a different way. He says as follows. The parak of brachos, the first parak of brachos, it says in Mefarash Rabbeinu, the basic and it says, what does it mean by davening in a shul? It means with the tzibbur. If you're not going to daven with the tzibbur, lo shani lon bein mispal beis knesses mispal beis acher. If you're not davening with minyan anyway, it doesn't matter where you're davening. There's no reason to go to a shul to daven. You can daven anywhere because you're not with the tzibbur. Aval Rabbi Yonah says, "Kasav v'shem hagonim shafilu kishein hatzibur mispalim yeshol adam mispal beis knesses." Right. So even when a person isn't davening with the tzibbur, they should still try to daven in the shul. Neshu kavu amyuchal tefillas tzibbur, because it is a place special for the tefillah of the tzibbur. And then we're also going to see the obligation to how much distance you have to walk in order to accomplish this, to daven with a tzibbur, if there's not one in your immediate area. Okay, so the question is, why would davening in a shul without a minyan even be considered as tefillah b'tzibbur? Okay, and here, why does the Beis Yosef say that there's no difference if you daven in a shul or a house if there is no minyan? Why doesn't he see a value in davening in a shul alone? Okay. Okay. And then a similar question that we just asked from taking Rabbeinu Yonah and the Gaonim, right, who say that there's no minyan, a person should still daven in a shul because it's the place of the tzibbur. Okay. So the benefit of praying in a tzibbur is that it's an eis ratzon, like we saw. So how does davening in an empty shul create an eis ratzon the same way that tefillah b'tzibbur does? Okay. Next, this is the Ritva. The Ritva says as follows. Even if a person doesn't go to shul, a person should still daven when the tzibbur is davening. Okay, so in other words, I can't go to shul, whatever reason. I can't go to shul, but I know that in shul they're going to be davening at 7:30 in the morning. So I should try davening at 7:30 in the morning in my house. Okay. So again, the benefit of davening with tzibbur is that it's an eis ratzon. So how does davening at the time that the tzibbur is davening create an eis ratzon? Okay, this is again another piece from Rabbi Zucker, and he says like this. So he says, "Misodze kol chelek mitoch bnei Yisrael, any portion of bnei Yisrael sheish lahem eichazu, that has this quality, she'etzem hagdarasam ke kvutza ba beha despising yachad lamaritz lamatara ushutefesh le'idiyas Hashem." Whenever the tzibbur gets together, a group of people get together with the idea of trying to understand God, yesh la mashgacha pratis miyuchades, they have on them a specific level of divine providence. Tefillas hatzibur his asfus zu lamaritz lamatara ushutefesh le'idiyas Hashem, and that's what tefillas hatzibur is. It's a group of people getting together to have yidiyas Hashem, to have a knowledge of God. And that's the same pasuk that we keep seeing, that they remembered that Hashem will redeem them. Right, that I was sanctified within the group of Bnei Israel. Kanhu pirsum das ha'emes. Right, because that when these groups of people get together, right, to daven, to learn, to understand Yidiyas Hashem. So the idea is that God's name is sanctified because there's a publicity. So our pirsum das. Like we have Pirsum Anes that publicizes a miracle. We have Pirsum Das Emes. We have a publicizing of the true, the word Das is sometimes translated as religion, but true belief system. Kihad Isa b'Sefer HaMitzvos, Mitzvos Asay Test, as it says in the Sefer HaMitzvos, Kasher Mitzvos B'nei Yisrael Yachad L'Maritz L'Matra Meshutefes, when B'nei Yisrael gets together for one specific purpose of Yidiyas Hashem, Shaper Have Pirsum Das Emes, because then you have more of this publicizing of the true religion. This is like what Avram was doing, going around explaining the true beliefs. That's everything of Kedusha that we have in Hilchos Tefila and Parachas. That's what we have here. Okay, so Tefillah B'Tzibur is a gathering of everybody for Yidiyas Hashem, and Tefillah B'Tzibur is Kiddush Hashem and the publicizing of the true belief system. Okay, that is our introductory shiur. It was a lot. But it should be a good shiur, and I hope you'll join later. All the best.